Well, hi there. Today I'm with Michelle Wayman, and Michelle is a synergetic play therapist and a parent coach. And thanks for being here, Michelle.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes, it's so great. So, Michelle, we've got 10 more minutes. What's one thing you would love for the world to know?
I would love for the world to know, especially parents, that their kids' challenging, most difficult behavior is actually and can be their superpower.
Oh, I was not expecting that. Well, that's really awesome to even conceptualize. So, tell me, how did you discover this?
Yeah, so kind of two sources. So one through my work and training in synergetic play therapy and Lisa Dion, which we know each other from, and then also Dr. John DeMartini's work, which mainly has to do with integrating perceptions of different things. And as a parent myself, I have a pretty strong-willed kid. A lot of times, there's like a lot of shame and judgment around so-called negative behaviors. And what I mean by that is that like if societally we have categorized traits, behaviors into these are like the positive things and these are the negative things. So if I say, hey, like this child is generous, they're thoughtful and they're kind,
Hmm.
automatically we're going to go, those are great things. Like I would love my kid to have those qualities versus if I say they are stubborn, they are mean, or they're just like challenging or difficult. Automatically, we go, well, those are negative things. Like
Hmm.
we should not want our kids to be like that. Um, and the challenging with that too is that there's even within that perception plays a big role. So that's why that is an important piece to hold too, because what one person could look at and go, well, that's mean. Another person could go, well, they were just being honest or they were being straightforward. So it kind of even depends person to person. But what often happens is that because we have these like so-called negative qualities and so-called positive qualities, kids learn to respond to like they look to adults and go, okay, if I act this way, if I express this part of myself, like I kind of get some negative feedback, or this person doesn't like me, or even through like punishments and things like that, they learn like, oh, this part of me isn't okay. Um, and
Mm.
that can create some difficulty down the road as we become adults and have disowned parts of ourselves and go like, oh, this isn't okay. um, and what I love for parents to see and what I love to talk about with parents is that often these really challenging things can become really positive traits and strengths, superpowers, as I like to say, when they're
Mhm.
adults. Like there's not anything under the sun that I really see as black and white as like this is just a bad thing that this kid is doing, whatever
Yeah.
the trait is. Hmm.
Yeah, I like that. I know we're both a synergetic play therapy trained, and it's like I see such a big difference between like a negative trait inside of a parenting context and then out in the world. So we might say like teach our child how to say please and thank you, but still in our home, we don't want to just say, oh, you can never be this way or you can never be a certain way, especially if potentially I can think back to my own childhood things that people may have found annoying in my home are now my superpowers too. Like I really love to talk, so now I talk for a living and things like that.
Mm. Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's like a perfect example, right?
yeah,
And I think, one of the jobs as a parent and caregiver is create awareness around these things, help kids hone them so that they can feel good about themselves and empowered and go like, wow, like I have these incredible strengths that I know how to use and different parts of myself that I'm allowed to express and I can choose to do that.
hmm,
Um, so I think it's just a more complete way to parent and grow kids, but there are some challenges to that too.
yeah, definitely. Well, that's such an interesting concept. So, what's the first step a parent would take?
Yeah, so I think a really helpful exercise is to think about a challenge that you're having with your child. It could be Dr. DeMartini, the language he uses is it's a trait, action, or inaction that usually drives us crazy. So it's something about them, it's something they're doing, or it's something they're not doing. And to write that down, get clear about it. And then right after that, then you start making a list of what are all the benefits to my child doing this thing? What are all the ways that this is actually going to serve them? And what I like to do is think about it in the future. So like when they're an adult, how is them having this trait or exhibiting this behavior actually going to be a boon for them? How is that going to serve them later in life? So in my example, because I like to talk about my daughter a lot, strong-willed. Sometimes strong-willed for her looks like saying no to things.
Wow.
And so if I take that piece and I go, okay, she says no. Some days it feels like she says no a lot. But I look at that and I go, is saying no something that I would like for her to be able to do as an adult one day? And the answer is, well, 100%. Like I can list benefit after benefit to her doing that. Do I want her to be able to feel like she has ownership over her body? Yeah. Do I want her to feel empowered in the workplace to set boundaries with her employer? Absolutely. Do I want her to feel like it's okay to disagree with people or to stand up for herself when she feels like something isn't right? And so what I would do is just go and list benefit after benefit after benefit until you can feel the scales start to tip a little bit, where you can go, okay, like, yep, there's some negatives. Yep, I still feel like there's some drawbacks to this thing, but there's also like huge upsides for them. And so until you can kind of get to that point where you're like, well, I don't want to get rid of it. I don't want to change this about her. I want her to say no. I want her to be strong-willed and comfortable in that, because that's going to be a huge strength of hers one day. And now I can like help her shape it. So that would be like, that's, I think, a super practical just exercise parents can do to really appreciate their kids for who they are. And then, you know, I also feel like I want to throw in here, it doesn't mean that like seeking out support and resources and asking for help with challenging behaviors like shouldn't happen, right? Like I'm a therapist, the coach, like I want to help people with these things too. So it's not, this isn't to go, well, like then you shouldn't need any help ever. Asking for help and support is a great thing. This is just to help your perception of your kids so you don't get lost in like the panic and fear and anger and just big feelings that can come up when you're dealing with some challenges with kiddos in your own home.
Yeah, totally. I think it's true. Like the parents, we get big feelings.
Mm-hmm.
We often say that about our kiddos, but we do too. And I like that, switching the perception, because at least it makes you, maybe you can get to where you question like, well, is this as bad as sort of, because I know for myself, it's usually a knee-jerk emotional reaction. Like, oh, you can't say that. So yeah, just getting for it to be a more neutral, like practical feeling around it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just gets out of that like black and white,
Yes,
one-sided experience. But like I said, that's hard to do because societally we have categorized all these different things. And even like speaking gender to gender, there's even some differences of what's okay, perceived as okay, and what's not. So
all baked into our perception.
yeah.
Yeah. Nice. That's a nice place to work. So what's a common obstacle that parents face?
I think there's two big ones. One is around fear, and one is around shoulds. So I find that often there's a lot of fear that parents have around like if I don't fix this thing in my kid, they're going to grow up to be a dysfunctional adult. Like there's going to be something missing in them, or they're not going to be able to like hold down a job, or like I hear this a lot from parents.
Yes.
And what I often share about that is it's important, I think, to remember that adolescence and rapid brain development goes until age 25.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a child and them having some challenges, or even a teenager. There is a lot of time to continue to hone, to learn and grow.
Yeah.
And especially with a parent who is present and attuned to help guide the child,
Yeah.
so that that does become a strength, so that that does become a superpower. That
Mm-hmm.
just changes the relationship instead of seeing it as something to get rid of. But there's a lot of time. I think as parents, sometimes there's like this panic that, oh, like we're on the clock. We got to like figure this out. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time. And then the other one, just the shoulds. Sometimes my strong willed child likes to be strong willed in public. And I can even feel sometimes a perception of judgment that, like,
Yeah.
oh, like I need to get this to stop right now. Like like I'm being judged, or even people close to me. Sometimes I feel like I have to explain, yeah, like this is hard. And my goal is not to get rid of this part of her, because I see how wonderful it's going to be for her to have this as a skill and strength and superpower one day. So I think overcoming the fear and then the shoulds and like the judgment that we perceive from other people tend to get in the way of us, doing that work with kids because
Yeah.
we're scared.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice. And how do I know if I'm doing it right?
Yeah. So I would say if you can get to that point when you're looking at benefits of the trait and you can see, I don't want to put that light out in my kid. I actually don't want to change anything about them.
Mm.
And I can totally look into the future and see that this is going to be really important for them to have that one day. I think when you can sit with that, then you're like, okay, I'm getting it. And even if it doesn't get to 100% completeness, I'm aware that
Yeah.
for some people listening to that might be like, okay, like that's a big ask that I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to change anything about my kid. Okay, can you start to just get curious? Can you start to just feel a subtle shift, even just moving the needle, where it's like, okay, like I can start to see how this could be beneficial. Any little shift inside means that we're headed in the right direction there.
I think that's so sweet, Michelle, because it's like giving your child the gift of your perception of them.
Mm, I like
And
how you said that. Yeah.
yeah, I got that from what you were saying. And it's like, even if it's 50% of the time that we manage to perceive it a little bit differently. And imagine applying this to your spouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, hey, maybe
Mhm.
it's great that I get nagged about turning the lights off or something like that. And just
Absolutely.
more appreciation for them. Oh, these are really lovely tools. Thank you so much, Michelle. Well, that's our time. So I'm going to put all your contact info, and I'm really grateful for this. Super practical. Thank you.
Thank you. It was fun to share.
Thanks.